Hello from Japan. Today, going to talk about vanishing Ireland and vanishing Japan and vanishing many countries. And we'll get right to it. But thanks everybody who's joined up and is signing up for paid subscriptions on my Substack. It's very important. I need it. You can also mail checks to my P.O. box, which is you can see on the bottom of the Substack. There's other ways, PayPal, Venmo, many other ways, right? Please help because I need it. This is going to get more and more expensive over time. Now, let's talk about some very interesting matters here. Ireland. Let's talk about Ireland to start with. Ireland clearly is being depopulated. It's being repopulated, depopulated and repopulated. The depopulation has been going on for a long time. Since I'm not sure when actually, but it really got hardcore in at least the 1840s. I think most people have heard of the Irish famines, the potato famine, that sort of thing. That wasn't the only place having famine in the 1840s. There was the Hungry 40s in Europe and that sort of thing. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It gets really interesting. This is something I've studied quite a lot. I've actually gone over to Ireland studying it and that sort of thing. But let's talk about something real quick. One matter that keeps popping up is when I say Ireland's being depopulated and repopulated. People often say, very often, even when I'm in Ireland, why would they do that? It doesn't make sense. And some people, like even Ivor Cummins, he's a very smart man. We did an interview together in Argentina in about November or December of 2024, so less than a year ago. And we talked about this. We were both giving a speech at an event in Buenos Aires, and I talked about how Ireland is being attacked. And of course, many people didn't quite believe it, but the people that have read me for years believe it because they know I say things that are outlandish pretty frequently that are outside of the Overton window, but they turn out to be true. Like the screwworms or Nord Stream or Groningen gas fields or MDR-TB coming in, long list, right? And we're going to go into famines. That's quite clear. It's just a matter of when. So when I was giving that talk down in Argentina and Ivor was giving it, I talked about how, another component of the same speech set of people, Ireland. I talked about Ireland being depopulated and being invaded, and again, many people in the last 4 or 5 years have a hard time believing it because they don't know why Ireland. And even Ivor Cummins, who lives in Ireland and is Irish, was like, I don't understand why they would come for Ireland. It doesn't make sense. And a lot of people then take that one step further. It doesn't make sense, to me, and therefore it can't be happening, right? Therefore it's impossible, which is like, that's akin to saying, it doesn't make sense that a super rich young girl would rob banks. It just doesn't make sense. Why would a super rich young girl rob banks and with like an automatic weapon and things like that and get involved in shootouts with the police when she's super rich, one of the most powerful families in America? So it's impossible. That would never happen, but it did. Patty Hearst did it, right? Patty Hearst was kidnapped, joined the SLA, Symbionese Liberation. What was it called? Front SLF. What was it called? Anyway, she joined that the terrorist and started robbing banks. And there she was on video, holding the machine gun and stuff, posing, right? But it doesn't make sense. I've been to the Hearst mansion over in California, or at least one of them I went to. You can go to as a tourist thing, but it's just quite amazing. The idea that it doesn't make sense, therefore it can't be, is just like over the top. And keep in mind when it comes to war and that sort of thing, a lot of things that won't make sense to us make sense to somebody else because they have a different problem set or a different way of viewing the world. I was in some fighting in Thailand, and the timing and everything about the fighting was based on something that an astrologer said over in Myanmar, in Burma. So I published on it. There were people killed. And so I published on it at the time. I think I called it The Fortune Teller of Burma. And it was just based on something this fortune teller, her name was E.T., not like E.T. Go Home, but almost. She was almost like that too. But she made this fortune. Anyway, people followed it, ended up in big shootouts and stuff. I was there. And so, I mean, but that was based on something a fortune teller said. Oftentimes fighting is based on, which way the bird lands in the tree in the morning. A bird always lands in this tree. Will he face that way or that way? If he fights that way, we go to war. If he doesn't fight that way, if he faces the other way, we'll stay in the village today. So, I mean, this is normal. This is normal. But anyway, when it comes to Ireland, it is strategic. Now, this has been going on for a long time. Now, let's talk about Ireland specifically. Is it vanishing? Is it vanishing? People say, well, that's impossible. Ireland's not vanishing. And, well, I don't know. Here's a book, Vanishing Ireland. There's one book. And, whoops. Oh, and here's another book, Vanishing Ireland. Right? And here's another book, Vanishing Ireland. And these are by Irish people. And here's another book, Vanishing Ireland. It's a series. And here's another one, Vanishing World. And it's about Ireland, right? And then there's another one, Dark Ireland, which is about Ireland vanishing, right? See, I got a lot of these. That's not the only ones. I've got some more here. And so, I mean, it's clearly happening, and it's right in front of everybody's eyes. I got quite a few. And so depopulation, it's not consigned just to Ireland. You got to keep in mind, big players, whether they're local strongmen or whatever, or globalist or something in between, they're constantly depopulating and repopulating places. This is like planting corn. This is like plowing up the weeds and planting the corn, I mean, this is happening constantly all around the world. It never stops. It's not consigned to, the 1840s, 50s, 60s. It's constantly going on. And it will constantly go on for the foreseeable future. And I physically see it in many of the countries that Masako and I go to, out with the Embra Indians or the Kuna Indians and the Darien Gap. They're being depopulated. They're going to be repopulated. That's crystal clear. And I could go on for hours about that. But like I often say, Marcia, I'm saying I can go on for hours about that. But here's one. Here's one from 1904. The Secret of Rural Depopulation. The secret, here's one of those inserts. The Secret of Rural Depopulation, right? I got a bunch of stuff like this, entire books on, this isn't just somebody's depopulating. It's like, this is Fabian stuff. This is like, we're going to do it. And this is how we do it, right? A lot of the books I have here, I got some sitting on the table here, but a lot of them are like how to depopulate, right? And the reasons for doing it. Like here's an interesting, in this Fabian 1906 came from a larger book. It's quite interesting. It says, cottages as booby traps. Another cause is to be found in the laborers' help. Now, tell me if this rings a bell. Cottages as booby traps. Another cause is to be found in the laborer's helplessness before what he rightly or wrongly considers injustice. There we go with injustice, 1906. I take the matter of housing as illustrative of this. Bad housing is admittedly one reason of rustic discontent. I speak here of the cottage merely as a booby trap. I used as a boy to read of the booby birds on the islands of the South Seas. They sat in rows, and sailors knocked them on the head, one after the other, without it occurring to them, the boobies, to fly away. Laborers are much of the same sort. So should we be, I suppose, if our faculties and our energies had been deliberately crushed down for generations. Basically, he's saying we would be the same if we were crushed down for generations. They are trapped, one after the other, with the most touching simplicity. But they do not like it. Irritations of this sort go on accumulating unnoticed until the cup runs over, if running over now. Anyway, he goes on to talk about how they're basically, he's basically calling them stupid because they've been crushed down forever, and they're booby birds. They're just, and they're easy to plow up. If you go on and keep studying this stuff, it's like no problem to just depopulate and repopulate. It happens all the time. There's people that go to school for this sort of stuff. There's people that, seriously, economics of famine, this isn't like how to avoid it. these people are, we're talking big players here, and small, that are constantly depopulating and repopulating. This is going to get more and more interesting as I go. Here's a book on the rural depopulation in England and Wales, 1851 to 1951. And it's a very interesting book. And rural depopulation of England and Wales. And it talks about how to do it. This is 1957. This book, yeah. Lots of books like this. If you can screenshot it, you can find it or remember what here. You might want to find it online and read some of these books. Let me hold it out so you can see it better and screenshot it. There you go. Just screenshot that. I'll hold it up a few more seconds, and or you can rewind it. So there you go. I mean, there's stacks of these books. You couldn't even pick them up. You'd have to be a deadlifting champion. Here's one. Well, here, let's go for this one. Rural depopulation in certain tidewater and Piedmont areas of Virginia. See, there you go. It goes on and on and on. This is a reprint, obviously. I like the old ones because you never know in these reprints. Sometimes reprints all I can get. Because they actually do change stuff sometimes. An economic history of famine resilience. This is just one of many. We could go on for neither feast nor famine. That's actually, I wouldn't waste your time on that one. I mean, actually, it could be interesting, but the migration control in the North Atlantic world. This is stacks of these, man. I got so many of these. I spend so much time in them. Famine and peasant societies, right? All this stuff is so well described, how it's done, how to do it, how to repopulate. It's like a farmer's almanac of, Machiavellian stuff. Well, Machiavellian. Here's another Vanishing Irish book. I got some more of these in the other. This isn't my only library section. Masako and I's library is quite extensive. But, Vanishing Irish. I've got some more of those, too, in the other room, in the other shelves. But here's some more. The Creative Migrant. As they start getting rid of Irish and they move away, this is all about Irish. The Irish in the new communities, basically, as they move overseas and go to places like South America and United States and other places. Who was getting rid of the Irish? Well, back then, it was the English. Well, and also Protestant and Catholics going at it hard. I'll show you some of that more later, too. Even as the Catholics and Protestants move over here to places like Japan to bring civilization, they are slaughtering each other back in Europe. Europe's the white people, Middle East. Here it is for the Irish, Patterns of Migration. This is actually interesting. It's kind of simply written, though, this series. The Meaning of the Famine. We'll get into that. The Irish Famine. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, this series is, there's good information in there. They got a lot of notes in the back for other places to look. Religion and Identity. Boy, again, Masako and I, we went up to Belfast, Northern Ireland. They got a huge wall between the Catholics and the Protestants now. Right now, they got a huge wall. It's bigger than the Trump wall, which is pretty big. Irish women and the Irish migration, right? So anyway, this is what I'm talking about, the depopulation of Ireland. The only people that don't get that just don't study at all. But even some of the Irish, weirdly, don't get it. So, but those Irish that don't get it, they would be like those booby birds in this one, right? They're right there. They're being depopulated and they're being repopulated, and they still don't get it. And then there's others who do get it. Here's another Vanishing Irish book. Wait a minute. As I recall, there was something interesting in this one right off that I might have wanted to read. This one's Second Impressionist from 1955. This one's To Ireland and Her Brave Sons and Daughters and All the Lands This Volume is Dedicated to in Token and Esteem. Actually, the Irish are being run out like the Jews around the world that have their diaspora. There's an Irish diaspora as well, but they're not as tribal as some of the Jews are. So they don't have the firmware. The Irish don't have the firmware to stay tribal and to start to take over different countries. Like, speaking of which, Maliakovsky, that guy's in the news again. Maliakovsky. Netanyahu changed his name to Nete, and then Netanyahu. And, the guy down in Argentina, also Maliakovsky, right? These are diasporas, right? And so Ireland has huge diaspora, as do the Kurds, as do the Baluch people, as does a long list of people that would go to the ceiling and to the floor. Now, the Zionists like to pretend, which are not Jews, but the Zionists like to pretend that only the Jews have a diaspora, but the Chinese have one. There's so many diasporas. There's nobody on earth that knows all the diasporas. There's too many. But here's something else on Ireland. The transactions of the famine in Ireland, 1846 to 1847. Now, interesting of this book, I got these two together because I've been studying these two together because they're contemporaneous. Like this one's from 1852, and this is basically how the Society of Friends, the Quakers, were helping the Irish, the Quakers, right? And so the Quakers were, because there was a big famine in Ireland, and they're the Quakers. That's the Society of Friends. This book is all about it's called The Transactions During the Famine in Ireland, 1846 to 1847. But the famine wasn't 1846 to 1847. It went to roughly 1852, but people argue about when it ended. So I'll just say, okay, 52 roughly. And so this book came out in 1852. So obviously they didn't have a chance to even, it was still kind of dragging out it was mostly over though. But so this is about the Quakers coming in that famine. Now I'm going to talk about the Irish famine. It's very interesting. This other book, this one's on overpopulation. This wasn't the other Irish book I wanted to mention, but there's so many books on overpopulation and how to famine your way out of it or do other things, start wars, that sort of stuff. English peasantry, anyway. So, yeah. Let's talk about the Irish famines. Let's talk about a couple more things. Nation of Beggars. This is about the Irish famines. I've read cover to cover only 3 books on Ireland. Mostly I stabbed through. This is a book called The Hungry Forties. This was famines in dozens of countries, actually, and food problems as well. Not total famines, but in Europe in the 1840s, which they called it the Hungry Forties, and this book is from 1904, the Hungry Forties, right? So that's describing the 1840s, and this book, Famine Over Europe, is about the 1940s, right? This is about World War II. So this is, another famine a century later, which is quite interesting. Before we go into the hardcore Irish famine components, let me talk about another thing here. As you know, I read a lot of old books, and so you need old encyclopedia and you need old dictionaries. And so this old encyclopedia, the Encyclopedia Britannica, I have the whole set, they're in really good condition. So this is like 1910, 1911 era. This is said to be like the last woke Encyclopedia Britannica. And then editions 12 and 13 are derivatives of this one, which is 11, the 11th edition. And but this thing is so well written. I spend so much time in it. Look at the so it's how many it's about, I don't know, 20 of them or so. But look at the nice paper and everything. It lays flat, so it's easy to read. A lot of the old books don't lay flat. This is kind of semi hardcover. It's not soft cover, but it's not hardcover. It's leather. But anyway, they're not expensive, weirdly. I mean, if you can get them, you could get this entire set for $1,000. I mean, it's like it's unbelievable. It's like a steal. It's like, feels like you're robbing them or something, getting it at that price. But there's so much in here in this 1910, 1911, and so this is the H through I. Anyway, it's Ireland. So in Ireland, they're talking about how. So why was there even famine in Ireland in the 1840s, right? In the early 1850s, why was there famine there? and some of it they're talking about here about the Catholics versus the Protestants, right? And the Catholics versus the Protestants, that's straight up like Shia versus Sunni, or the Indian Hindu version would be like Vishnites versus Shivites, right? I mean, for the Hindus out there, the Muslims out there, it's Sunni versus Shia. It's for the Jews, they've got own internal fights. They're brutal to each other, and even Buddhists will fight each other. And so, but anyway, this is talking about Catholics versus Protestants and the law. So we're talking the 1840s, but this is a 11th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica.